I wanted to give the majority of the time to today's topic, which is data enablement for agentic AI. And Rui's been doing some thinking about this in AstraZeneca, which he'd like to share. And where we wanted to go to is to conversation and discussion, so that we're pooling ideas. So as he's speaking, think about how we can discuss that afterwards. But for now, over to you, Rui, and I hope you'll share your screen.
Nice to meet you all. If you have not met me before, as David mentioned, I'm from AstraZeneca, and we do quite a lot about AI and GenAI, agentic AI solution delivery, but also we delivering quite a lot of data pipelines. Just maybe a bit of more background before I get into the slides. So why we are thinking about data enablement for AI agent is because we started our agentic AI journey mid last year. We implemented quite a lot of generative AI and AI agent related solutions in AstraZeneca. It makes us start to reflect on, look, this is such a big sea change going forward in the future. Do we need to think differently in terms of how we approach data? Now, what I saw there is because not everybody are familiar with the concept of AI agent, right? What I would like to do is baseline our understanding in terms the journey for the past 2 years, in terms of technology-wise, where AI agent come from, and what are the technology advances in the past 2 years. The second point I want to also touch on is where we are going, right? What's the future direction of AI agent? And what does that mean for supply chain? What does that mean for manufacturing? And what be the right data strategy to think about if you're thinking about implementing AI agent in your enterprise? Okay, so first, just a bit of recap in terms of key attribute of an AI agent. Number one, an AI agent should be able to reason, to be able to plan, so to think about it, right? And if you ask a question, it should really go through step by step to be able to reason. And if you use ChatGPT, the current O1, O3 model is pretty advanced in terms of reasoning capabilities. AI agent should also have memory capabilities. So the conversation you are having with the agent and the information they have retrieved in terms of executing the AI agent, they need to remember. So you don't lose the context, you don't lose that kind of memory, which if you log off or if you come back in. The third element is very, very important. It's really about tooling. So what makes AI agent special is not only about the reasoning, the memory. More importantly, AI agent should be able to interact with the outside environment, to be able to interact with the tools, to execute the tools. And the last attribute, which I see that start to emerge in a lot of AI agent implementation, is the ability to learn, right? Based on the question you asked, the answer you got, the feedback you have around interacting with AI agent will learn and will adapt and change its capabilities going forward. Now, let's take a look at what happened in the past 2 years, starting from reasoning, then move on to memory, to the tooling. Believe it or not, actually, all of this started back in 2022, when Google Brain actually published a paper called React Reasoning. That's basically the first time the agentic word has been coined, and it's using large language model to be able to reason, to think, to go through the step by step and come up with a bit of a plan when you ask a question. Then in March 2023, GPT-4 was released. So what happens is when React was published, at that time it was GPT 3.5. The capability of GPT 3.5, I don't know how many of you have tested with GPT 3.5, was quite limited, especially around reasoning capability, right? However, GPT-4 released, it has significantly improved how it can perceive complex information, be able to solve problems, also be able to understand the context. And then in the same month, pretty much immediately after releasing GPT-4, OpenAI has released GPT plugin, right? So basically you can build different kind of plugins to be able to perform different tasks. It's more specialized in different areas. So for example, travel, there's a travel plugin. And then for browsing the internet, searching, there's a searching plugin. Why is this so important? It's really start paving the way of specialized reasoning capabilities and specialized AI agent capabilities. Now, then in May 2023, you can see how fast this kind of things are evolving. Claude is basically a large language model being released by Anthropic. So Amazon is behind Anthropic. And they have basically published this large language model called Claude, which has 100K context window. GPT-4 has very limited, right? I remember when GPT-4 was only getting started, they only have 10,000 characters they can support. So very small memory. And Claude actually massively changed that to basically 100K. What this means is you can basically put the entire book into Claude, and Claude will be able to digest and reason against that particular book. And then in June 2023, OpenAI released a function call to support bigger context windows, but also support different way of calling external actions. In May 2023, so around the same time, and the Claude has improved their context window from 100K to 200K, and then Google also released their Gemini flagship model, which surprised everybody that they can remember 100 million tokens as part of their memory, right? And so massively boost the memory capacity. Now, moving to the tools, the first startup actually start working on AI agent in terms of tool interaction is a company called Similar in Silicon Valley. I don't know many of you have heard about this, but actually this company still exists. They are the first company actually proposed using AI agent to use computers. So basically you can deploy an AI agent on your computer. AI agent will be able to interact with your browsers, those kind of tools. And then very quickly in October 2024, the big labs like Claude and Anthropic, they replicate the computer use, right? So they have computer use, tool use capabilities now built into their APIs. And in January this year, OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, released their operator, which is the research preview, but it's going towards the same direction where they are offering tooling around interacting with the browsers, interacting with computers directly. Okay, so that's what happened in the past 2 years. Where do I think AI agent is heading towards? Right now, we are somewhat in between phase 1 and phase 2, right? Phase 1 is basically a single agent. The agent has reasoning, planning capabilities, has memory, can interact with the tool. And a lot of our internal early solutions is a single agent approach. More and more in our company and what I see outside is that kind of multi-agent single server. So essentially, if you have a particular problem you're trying to solve, instead of just implementing a single agent, you have multiple agents which you can code. And all of this will be deployed on a single server. You can execute that. And there are quite a lot of emerging frameworks in this space like LangGraph, CrewAI, AutoGen, right? And LangGraph and CrewAI is becoming more and more popular. So that's a single server multi-agent. But what we're seeing recently is moving towards multi-agent, multi-service. Imagine you have thousands of agents going forward in the future, right? You don't really want to execute all of this agent in your single server. You want to deploy them into multiple computers and allow them to use different tools. Then there are two emerging standards. One is released by Anthropic called MCP, Model Context Protocols. Basically, it's a protocol just like TCP/IP in networking or HTTP in internet browsing. It's a protocol to allow agent to interact with tool in a standard way, right? Avoiding you have to call API functions every single time you want to use the different tools. About 2 weeks ago, Google also released what they call the A2A protocol. What A2A protocol does is allow agent to talk to agent. So agent A and agent B, they can be collaborating with each other, even if they're deployed on a different machine. What I think this is ultimately lead to is really the final end game is the phase 4 agent OS. And this actually a company, the company funders behind this dev agent company is the creator of Android. So basically they left Google and they set up this company, and they are in the process of saying that, hey, agent and AI agent is such a fundamental sea change around approaching software and approaching automation, approaching how we interact with our day-to-day activities. We need a fundamental rethink about our operating system. Basically, they are working on an agent OS. Okay, so that's basically a bit of a baseline in terms of our understanding where is agent coming from, where it's heading to in terms of direction. I do want to caveat this by saying that this field, as many of you probably know, that it is evolving so fast that this picture will change quite rapidly, right? Literally almost every single month. What does this mean for supply chain? If I look at traditional supply chain, and this diagram is quite complex and represent the current way of thinking about supply chains. So plan, make, quality, source, logistics, and deliver, right? And it's always waterfall and sequential. You go through all of the steps, and if one step you run into a bottleneck, the whole entire process basically ground to a halt. There's not much flexibility to change things on the fly, where I think ultimately AI agent is going to do is for each of those domain areas, for example, for planning, you will have a group of agents being deployed in that space with the orchestration agent to be able to orchestrate that. And for make, for quality, for source, for logistic, and for delivery, there will be multiple agents deployed in each of those areas, and they will be coordinating, orchestrated by the orchestration agent. And the beauty of this approach is you don't have to wait, right? And it's not a waterfall where you have to complete step 1, then move to step 2. There will be more of on-demand change, and the flexibility of AI agent brings is really more dynamic way of managing your supply chain. And you might be wondering, okay, so this is basically the utopia I'm painting, right? And where we are getting to going forward in the future, and we are not there yet, and the technology is not quite there yet. But let me maybe just ground us a little bit around, okay, recently what we are seeing in terms of the challenge with enterprise AI, especially when you're talking about generative AI. One thing we are seeing very common is a lot of companies, I'm pretty sure, including yours, are putting more and more investment in terms of generative AI and trying to adopt generative AI solutions and even build generative AI solutions themselves. And you can see some numbers. From McKinsey, they basically estimated that 4.4 trillion added value could be generated by adopting and embracing generative AI and AI agent. However, if you dig down a little bit more into the details, what you see, the reality actually does not match up with what people are saying about generative AI and the AI agent. And here I'm sharing some statistics. So only around 4% of the company actually is really creating substantial value from AI. Even that there's huge promise in this space, right, around AI and generative AI, and a lot of people are struggling to justify the investment against the ROI on AI and in generative AI. And ROI is a bigger problem, and with all of this investment in enterprise, and people start to ask more and more around why the ROI is so low, and is it still justifiable for us to put in such investment? Now, I think one of the key reasons, there might be multiple reasons, right? One of the key reasons is to do with what we call the AI context paradox. So why context is important? AI system is very good at logic thinking and very complex reasoning and synthesizing, generating new information. However, if they are missing your enterprise knowledge, your enterprise context, and a lot of this knowledge actually is locked up in human brains, right? It's inbuilt. It's in your SOPs, it's in your process. Without understanding all of those, AI will only give you very generic answers, will not be able to understand the nuances of your context in your particular enterprise. And this is actually one of the key reasons why we think the ROI currently for generative AI, especially for AI agent, are so low. And if you think about it, why this is so critical? And the chart on the left-hand side is often I show to people is if you think about differentiated value, a lot of our work currently is around building chatbot, right? Be able to generate contents and enterprise, maybe building some general purpose assistant, generate SOPs, generate contract, helping with procurement. And I think a lot of companies is on this stage. It's fine. It definitely give us a lot of convenience, right? And give us some productivity gains, but it's really not going to drive that differentiated value. Where we should really get to is be able to use AI, generative AI to augment, optimize enterprise workflows as we know it. But if you really want to transform your business to maximize that value, we're talking about specialized AI agent, right? An agent to be able to perform some of the tasks people are not willing to perform, or maybe some of the complex tasks that human beings often are struggling with. And this is where more and more enterprise context is required. If you don't have, now this is where we're going back to the topic of data. If you don't have that enterprise context captured in your data, and your AI, if you have the ambition to get that kind of AI agent era going forward in the future, I'm pretty sure that a lot of enterprise were struggling on this particular space. Okay, so how we are approaching this, and this pyramid should not be a big surprise for people who are working in the field of data, but maybe just let me go through them one by one. The bottom pyramid is where we're getting the data, right? Data from traditional transactional systems, from MES systems, from history, and from SAP, from IoT devices. So generating the data. Above layer is what we call the information layer. So you can enrich your data with a little bit context, some of the histories. And then the layer I do really want to call out today is where AI can be really leveraging going forward is the knowledge layer. So you have some enterprise context built into your information layer, but ultimately the knowledge layer is really about capturing that information in business processes, in human knowledge, and be able to represent that knowledge into your data. So your AI layer, which is in the wisdom layer, to be able to make decisions, right? To reason based on those knowledge. And in AstraZeneca, the way I approach this is, of course, we need to improve the data source qualities at the foundational layer. We are building massive amount of reusable data products with enterprise context for the past couple of years. What we're getting into is thinking a little bit more around how do we build that knowledge layer, how do we build that semantic layer, and this will lead to building more and more knowledge graphs based on the data products we have built. And we do believe that if you are really serious about adopting AI and the AI agent, we need to start thinking about data products. We also need to start thinking about the knowledge graphs, right? Leveraging knowledge graphs to capture that enterprise context. Okay, so this is my last slide. I will open up for questions. I do want to highlight that enterprise data strategies start to evolve. The first point I want to make here is think about your data ecosystem. It's not really about one monolithic data solutions or one single platform anymore. It's how can you bring that ecosystem in a composable way so they can interplay with each other. You can fastly evolve that data ecosystem to generate better insight and faster. The second point I want to make is the culture of autonomy. The approach of a central team doing everything around data and AI is not really going to scale going forward. With the advance of AI tools and also the need for consuming data, the hunger for consuming data, promoting autonomy into different business areas, give them more flexibilities to be able to own their own data, but also be able to leverage that data to generate insight is going to be a critical factor for boosting productivity level. The third point is really around you need to start thinking about how do you future-proof this, your implementation, and does your implementation around data and AI give you that future resiliency? If you think about how fast this field are evolving, right? And that does require a bit of rethinking about your operating model around how you approach solving some of those business problems around data and AI. Contextual intelligence I already touched on in my previous slides. Giving enterprise context is really important. The last point I do also believe strongly is for people who are dealing with data, it's also about using automation, using some of the AI tools to augment and automate some of the ways we think about and producing data. Synthetic data, can we generate artificial data for people to use? Can we automate the building of data products and data warehouses? Can we automatically generate data pipelines? Can we make sure our data pipeline is self-healing based on AI machine learning insight? So those are the direction I believe enterprise data strategy is going to evolve in the future. Okay, right. This is my last slide. I am definitely open for discussions and questions and feedback.
We have a question. How well received was this by the business?
Business is definitely excited about this, right? And in fact, if I look at very senior level in AstraZeneca, even our CEOs is talking about the AI agent. And it's definitely, there's a top-down desire to thinking about the future of generative AI and implementing AI agent, using AI agent to automate some of the things we're doing, maybe sometimes even using AI agent to rethink our current process. What I find is most productive is not necessarily the senior leadership endorsement, because sometimes, for better or worse, they could be too excited about some of this concept, right? And what is useful is also complement that with a bit of a bottom-up approach by identifying concrete use cases. So for example, if you look at this slide, there are multiple agents we're proposing, but right now we are implementing 2 or 3 agents in this picture within AstraZeneca. It's really about how do you start small and can quickly build that as a success before you massively roll this out into the whole enterprise end-to-end, right? So that's our journey. On the data front, we've been on this journey for the past 2 years. So this is something actually I'm particularly proud about the team who had done really fantastic job of educating business about the importance of data, but also getting their buy-in into thinking about data products. So even our very senior leaders are talking about how are we progressing building reusable data products on a regular basis. It's on our scorecard, and we are starting to evolve from the end of last year and this year is really moving from that information layer. If I just show you this one more time into that knowledge layer. And knowledge layer is definitely more difficult compared to the information layer. But we do believe that without a knowledge layer, you will not get to what you are trying to achieve with AI and machine learning.
What struck me about this one is the pyramid on the left is familiar, but then just connecting it to knowledge graphs and AI sitting on data products, I think that's brilliant, simple, but really fantastic, great. And here's another question. What are your thoughts on the dependency between the data, knowledge, and information AI agents are based on and the structure of the business processes they're based on? Are there any adjustments to the business processes to make them more AI agent compatible, like removing variability or standardization? How is that interaction happening?
I think that's a very, very good question. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our enterprises are facing this kind of challenges, right? The variability around processes, your different manufacturing sites are following a different manufacturing process. They use different system. How do you consolidate? And we are definitely facing the same kind of problem. I don't think we are ever going to resolve all of this. Yuri, you want to say something?
Can I jump in? Yeah, Rui.
Yeah.
One thing that we are trying to do is, and that's what my team are trying to do, is platformize. Is that the right word? From a manufacturing perspective, we're trying to create platforms so that site A and site B, and this is why I've joined this as well, and I want to help Rui's team. We're trying to create a data standard so that it won't look any different from site A and site B. Now, there will always be differences, but we're trying to agree what that core from a scientific perspective is to say for, I don't know, for MAB's platform, whatever, this is the data that we have to gather in the same way from site A, B, and C. So that's what we're trying to do from a platform perspective. We also, I don't know, Rui, if you want to jump in here, but from my team's perspective, we are concentrating on the new platforms. We sort of not given up, but somebody else in AstraZeneca is looking at the brownfield. I'm doing the easy stuff, which is the new platforms, right? So yeah, we are trying to. And what my question to the team would be, one thing that I'm trying to do with the platforms is also gather the knowledge, right? So I'm doing the yellow one and the blue one. I'd love, Rui, if your team could tell me, how do you want me to capture that blue one? Because we're trying to capture this platform knowledge as well, but it's sort of at the moment it's in PDFs and paper on glass. So we should catch up about that sometime. But from a platform and manufacturing technologies perspective, we are trying to standardize at the system equipment level.
I think you a really fantastic point. Maybe just let me build on this a little bit. The approach we're taking around addressing the variability on the standard, variability on data quality is almost like a hub and spoke model, right? We do believe that from culture-wise, you really need to empower the people who are really close to that process to own their data, right? So this is where, Yuri, to your point, you are building that platform because you and your team are really close to those domains, that business process. However, we also have a central team, which we call the data office, and they are overseeing all the data standard, making sure we are consistent across the board.
How do you get from data products to knowledge graphs? What's the extra piece that you have to add? Surely not a PDF.
I mean, you have the right person on the call. Maro is doing a lot of this work, right, in this space. To simplify this, I think you need to think about semantic. And to capture that semantic information, you need ontologies and you need controlled vocabularies. And it's not a journey you should take lightly. It actually is quite complex. But I do believe that if you can be targeted in terms of your ontology, your controlled vocabulary, you can really drive business value and dividend in that space. So designing your ontology and designing your controlled vocabulary, ontology is almost like the schema for knowledge graph, right? Before you put the data into knowledge graph, you need to have ontology.
And another question. We already talk about standardization and context for data products, but we don't always need a knowledge graph. Are both really required?
Yes and no. I think depending on what kind of question what kind of decision you're trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
From my point of view, definitely you can start with Dataflux, right? Dataflux is definitely, I would recommend you start from there. You can answer certain questions. But if you want to make a really complex decision, so for example, your inventory level is down, what will be the downstream impact? And with that kind of knowledge graph, it's very difficult to make that decision. Yeah, and I'm certainly not saying everything should be put in knowledge graph, right? That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And in fact, I do think it's complementary, the Dataflux and knowledge graph.
Where did data products come into this?
I would say both data products and knowledge graphs is the data backbone behind these agents.
Okay, thank you.
I really like this term of minimum slice and maximum value, right? So you don't have to build that entire foundation. It's how do you carve out that minimum slice and then do that.
How are you modeling business processes? Have you got any tools? How are you training LLMs to recognize processes?
Our business processes actually is captured in previously a tool called Nimbus. I don't know whether you heard about this, but we are moving into a new tool called BIC. That's a new tool currently we're introducing. So I guess your question is leading towards, once you capture that business process, how do you map that into ontology and knowledge graph?
Yeah, exactly, right. Transfer to knowledge.
And I think, the beauty of manufacturing and supply chain is a lot of our underlying processes are quite similar. Okay. And the approach we're taking in terms of accelerate this is really go out and buy external ontologies and acquire open source ontologies, then trying to mesh them together to fit our business process.
So you're not developing your own ontologies?
Yeah, that's going to take us years, right?
How are you leveraging your knowledge graphs? Are users writing Sparkle queries or what?
So if you need to retrieve the information from knowledge graph, what we have is what we call text to Sparkle query. So essentially you can ask your question in natural language, and then large language model will be able to automatically convert that to Sparkle and query the information.
Okay, that area I haven't delved into yet. Okay, and
can your agent also query your knowledge graphs?
Yes. Yeah. What I would also say that if I go back to my last slide, that automation and AI, I really believe that AI can help with the construction of the ontology and also the controlled vocabulary and also populating knowledge graph, right? So before you need a lot of ontologies to just handcraft and maintain all of this, I think that paradigm has shifted. We don't really need an army of people to do this kind of things. And there's a lot of things we can just automate. In fact, if you prompt ChatGPT right now, it can give you a pretty decent ontology already.
Fantastic. Now the agentic bit here was the tooling so it can do stuff in the real world. We haven't really explored much of that. Where do you see the first things it'll be really able to do in the pharma world are likely to be? Again, looking at your vision, there are agents for everything, but where is it going to get agentic and actually make things happen first, do you reckon?
I mean, I can talk about R&D because I used to work in R&D, but maybe let me start with the manufacturing and the supply chain space. A lot of agentics being implemented is where you have unstructured data at the moment. So for example, your SOPs, your menus, where you need to spend a lot of time writing those documents or understanding, comprehending those documents. This is where I feel agentic AI agent can really add a lot of value. So to give you a concrete example, we implemented a solution. It's not really AI agent, but it's getting evolved into AI agent for procurement, right? How can you help procurement to automatically generate and create a contract, and which take absolutely a lot of time for people to write that kind of contract originally. Now you can just, with a click of a button and maybe a few edits, you get your contract ready. And that's where we're getting to. On the R&D side, there are many things, right? Research assistant can you get an assistant to help you with the research, to search all the literatures, to be able to go through all the insight, to suggest new ideas, right? And in fact, knowledge graph is already playing a critical role in the R&D space. Maybe in the future, even to suggest new molecules and new potential target and candidates.
So thank you to everybody who's contributed just now, and most of all, thank you to Rui for such a stimulating presentation.